where did we meet? We met. Did we meet at church? Is that where we met?
You met at church at Destiny, where you were on staff at the time.
And I'm not completely sure how long ago that was at this point. It's been a couple of years, for sure.
About 15 years.
Has it been that long? Yeah. Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
And what do you do now? Let everybody know what you do now. A little bit of your day to day.
What I do now? Well, let's see. So I first I'm a dad. I've got 3 wonderful boys. 15, 11, and 3. Like I said, all boys. Keep my hands full there. And Kara, my wife, she always says she's got 4 boys because I'm just like they are sometimes. I collect toys, as you can see. Oh, this side. There we go.
Yep.
And these are all Lego sets here that I collect for myself. They're not for my family. So anyway, what I do. So I work for a software company called Waterfield Tech. And I've been here for about 7 years. And I'm on the sales team. So my job is basically go find new business. I've got to patch some accounts I just have to manage and make sure they stay happy and see if they want to, buy more stuff, that kind of thing. Yeah. But that's what I do.
That's great. You and I have connected on lots of different levels. You've spoken at the church a number of times. And one of the things that just when we were planning this upcoming conference, one of the things that I immediately thought of was, who do I know that is really a great communicator that's passionate about life and about people? And of course, that's why you came to mind immediately. So I'm really excited about my community getting to know one of my friends. And so I will just kind of tease a little bit about what you're going to be speaking about at the conference this summer. You're going to be talking about being resilient.
Yeah.
And boy, when you and I were kind of brainstorming about that really resonated with me because all of us in this particular community, there are some people who are doing this just for fun, and that's awesome. But there's a lot of people who are trying to build a business, and regardless of what business you are trying to build, that can be a bumpy ride. It really can. And there's you get bumped and bruised in many different ways. The ego can get bruised when you're trying to build something and it's not working. When you're in the creative environment, like a lot of us here are, and you're making things, it's terrible, but your self-worth can get caught up into that. And it's not a good idea, but it's true. You go, hey, I made this thing, and does somebody buy it? And it's really easy to get the ego and the heart all caught up into that. And we're trying to find places to sell our stuff. And maybe there's other people in the same environment that's trying to do the same thing. We think it's so there's all these things. And it's easy to get down if sales are low. Maybe you're trying to make this into a career, and right now it's just a hobby. So all those things. And so when you and I were talking about being resilient, I was like, yes, we need that. As we talk about this, I'm just going to kind of throw this softball to you, and you can field it however you want. Why? I'll let you just kind of maybe say some of the obvious. Why is it important for all of us to learn to be resilient people? And maybe what are some tips? Talk to me about that. Maybe some life experiences. I mean, I'll give you an obvious one. I know you've had to be resilient in your life. What does that look like for you? And why does that matter to us?
Man, it's so funny, Mark. So before I joined this call here, I felt like such a hypocrite. Because, I'm like, Mark is, he's invited me to this wonderful conference he's put on in June. And I'm going to get on and get to talk to him today about being resilient. But I'm dealing with stuff right now at work that's just frustrating me right now. You know what I mean? I had sort of just a rough morning. I was like, kind of pull your hair out kind of moments. It's not uncommon in business. It's just kind of one of those things. But I was like, I'm supposed to go in there and talk about being resilient. I don't feel resilient at all. I just kind of feel frustrated. Anyway, but what I've learned, Mark, in I think minor setbacks or minor failures and the big ones is I think that the biggest one is to not expect failure, because that just means that's too negative, but to expect to learn from failure. Failure is going to come. It's just going to happen. It's just part of life for us to think. I mean, I mentioned I'm a dad. I've got 3 boys. It's not realistic. And they've already discovered at their age that everything they try doesn't work. I want them to try, sport. I want them to try to make that grade. I want them to try, to make all district for the instrument of their choice. And sometimes they don't make it. Sometimes they don't make the grade they expected. They didn't make the cut for the sports team or the all district, set for, the horn line, whatever. And so how do we come back from that? I think rather than me just kind of sharing like, here's 3 amazing principles that'll change your life, and I'm just going to share my own story, if you don't mind, just for a little bit. And I'll share this in more detail in June, but just at a very basic level. I think I was thinking of what story I could share, because I just want everyone to know that I'm in the trenches just with just like you are. And so I started with a friend of mine. I started a church. It was about 17 years ago, maybe actually 20 years ago. Golly, I feel so old, man. So about 20 years ago, buddy of mine out of college. We've been best friends. We're like, hey, and this had been our dream since meeting in college. We're going to start a church. We're gonna change the world. It's going to be this massive church. We're going to do this community outreaches. We're going to do all this influence in the city and all this kind of stuff. And if the moment finally came, we're going to start this church. And we started it. We went for a couple of years. And Mark, more than most what's involved here. Okay. But especially at a church plant level, you're starting from nothing. So we started in like his living room. Dude, we had overhead projectors.
Okay? Yes.
Overhead projector for the songs. Man, this is before we even had we could meet in the high school kind of thing. We're meeting in his house. We're moving the furniture out, in and out every week. It was so much work. And then we finally moved into a Grove 6th and 7th grade center down the street. 61st and 169. Moved over there. We were meeting on Sundays. We had the banner. I'm leading volunteer teams and set up and tear down every week. Man, it was so much work. Just getting the thing set up and tear down. So I'm sharing that with you because all the work and the investment is very similar to what you have gone through. People listening have gone through building a business, trying to get your name out there, just trying to stand out and make a difference, what you do. So fast forward 4.5 years, the church closes, man. Long story, just the pastor at the time, I was his assistant, the pastor at the time, he and his wife just having some marital challenges, not uncommon, but they ended up having to close the church as a result. And, at the end of that, I had to really take a step back, and I was like, man, this sucks, man. This feels terrible. 4.5 years of, blood, sweat, tears, money, into this thing. And I just felt like, man, was this even worth it? Am I a failure because this thing that I invested myself into failed? And I had to take a step back. And frankly, I have to, whenever I face setbacks now, big or small, it's important that I step away from the thing, and if I could share just a couple of things, like I said, you can't avoid failure. It's part of life. It's, but you can't expect to learn from it. And it took me a while because I'd invested so much of my time, my life into this thing, be able to step back. So that's how I met you, Mark. I ended up, was like, I need to go to a different church. I ended up going to Destiny, where you were on staff at the time.
Yep.
And I began to think about, what did I learn from this? And one of the biggest ones was, hey, the people that I met along the way who were part of this small church, and people I met at the next church I attended, they're still part of my life now. Me and you were friends as a result of this. Like, I never would have met you, Mark.
Nope.
Never would have met you if I hadn't gone through that. You know what I mean? Because you and Mike were instrumental in helping me sort of heal from that. I just need to take a step back. It's like, I'm not going to be on staff anywhere for a while. Yeah. I just need to rest. So that's the big one. I think it's so important when we're going through setbacks or obstacles or even flat out failure, to reframe that in our mind, because it's so important to pay attention to what we think at that time. Because if we go back and we think, well, this means I'm a failure, and we fail to separate ourselves and our personal value from the thing that failed, that's really damaging. Do you know what I mean? That's really damaging. And so one of the things I do is I like to exercise. buddy of mine, we've been working out together for 20 years. Honestly, right now we're working out in his garage, and I go out there about 4:30 in the morning, and I'll run and go work out, and it just helps that the physical for me. And not everyone does that. I'm not saying you have to do that to be resilient, right? But just for me, just that physical exertion helps to give an outlet for that stress. I like doing that. You know what I mean? And the other thing too that was really helpful for me is having friends that I could open up to and talk to. Hey, I went through this thing. I'm dealing with this, and what do you recommend? Am I handling this the right way? Am I seeing this the right way? You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's what I think.
That's really good, man. Let me just kind of touch on a couple of those that you mentioned, because I think they're so important. Your routines or your habits, routines. Would you agree that healthy habits, healthy routines can either help us bounce back or maybe never even crash to begin with, right?
Right.
Or vice versa, the absence of those can cause those things. I know for me, in the last handful of years, it's funny, a lot of these lack of habits or lack of routines sneak in subtly. Like, I don't get up one day and say, I'm never doing this again. It just slowly, I wake up one day and realize I haven't done that in a while.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And a couple of you mentioned relationships or connections, people support. I've been thinking about that lately. Is I need to reconnect with a certain group of people for my own health. Like a lot of these people who are watching us today, they know me online, which is great, and I deeply love this community that we've built. But I also need some people in real life. And specifically, I need a bunch of guys that also can call me on my crap when I'm not doing it right. People have given permission to do so. You think you agree that's important?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think just recapping on what you said, your habits, your daily routines, and your network. Network sounds like a business term. I really mean like your circle. Circle is probably a better word. I say network, people think business. That's not what I mean. I mean like your circle, people you trust. And there probably won't be 20 people on the list. You'd be lucky if you had 3.
Yeah.
You'd be lucky if you have 3 people, that you can call at any time, and they're not going to judge you. They're not going to come down on you. They're just going to listen and support you. Like you would be lucky to have 3 people like that in your life. So having that network, and that's why it's really important too, because that circle is so important, Mark. It's really important not to lose that circle while you're focused on the business. And if you're devoting so much of yourself to this business and your whole, life, you neglect that circle. That can include your wife, your spouse, or your friends, that the people who help make you who you are. It's important to keep that going, because if this starts to suffer over here, you're gonna have to lean on them. You're gonna have to rely on them. And then I think the daily routines too, exactly what you said. You don't wake up and say, I'm going to stop doing that healthy thing, whatever it is. It's just one day you wake up like, why don't I do that anymore? I don't even know what happened. But that's really important. I think the really big one is just learning how to rest, because I think in this culture, which is just grind. If you hit a failure, just get up and work harder. Well, that might not be the healthiest thing, just to get up the next day. Sometimes it might be you need a rest. You need to take a day or longer, depending on what you need. Don't just you need to rest and recuperate and then go back and try it again. Not just just drive yourself in the ground. You know what I mean? It just feel like you need some balance there.
Man, in fact, boy, you just sparked off a bunch of thoughts that I've had, experiences I've had. Like, I'll try to remember these both. When I stepped back from the church staff, and it's funny how when you look back, you realize things you didn't realize at the time. There was, I'm going to tell you the feelings I had, but I'm going to explain them. I realized I did not cultivate friendships like I initially thought I did. I had people that knew me, but didn't know me, and they weren't really friends. And I realized that's my fault. Like I didn't do that. And so I hope anybody who was there who knows me, I hope you hear my heart here. Those people are amazing. It's not a shot at any of them. I realized I was doing a job, but I wasn't building deep friendships that I could call on when I needed them.
Yeah.
And that was my fault because I wasn't doing it. It's not theirs. Right.
Right.
And I realized, wow. And so I guess what I'm saying there is you need to build those when you don't need them.
Right.
So they're there when you do need them. Because when you actually need those, you can't start from zero and build them. Right? I mean, what are your thoughts there?
Exactly. Yeah. Those are relationships. They need an investment, they take time. And so, and I'm preaching to myself here because sometimes I forget that too. I get lost in just kind of the kids and the sports and, and just the work and sort of forget about friends over here. And so my wife, Kara, she does a really good job of saying, hey, we're going to plan a double date with our friends. She'll just do that. So she honestly, she gets credit for a lot of that. Sometimes I forget that sometimes. But she's really good. And when I go, I always enjoy myself, but she's really good at making sure I don't, have that blind spot. Say, hey, we got some amazing friends here. We need to hang out with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So part about being resilient is having that, like you said, circle of trusted people who I think it's also important to mention. Sometimes they have to actually have explicit permission to, I don't know why I jumped in my head to look in your refrigerator.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right.
That's a great image. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Because normally you don't walk into somebody's house and just go right to the refrigerator without permission.
A stranger. Right. Exactly. That's a great point. That's really, really good.
And I sometimes in my life, I found that, I desperately need something that nobody has permission to do. And in thinking about our topic of being resilient is if I were to build those people into my life, I would bounce back a lot faster. Right.
Yeah. Right.
So
exactly.
The other thing I thought about was kind of related to this was, you said rest.
Yeah.
Throughout my life, unfortunately, I've run too long, too hard many times. And then sometimes you are forced to rest, like you didn't choose to.
Yeah.
Like either something physical happened or emotional or something happened that forced the rest that I didn't take before. And then those rests are almost always longer than you would have otherwise done because now you're you need longer rest.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I think I was thinking about this too, Mark. It's so interesting. I'll go back to that period of my life, the one I just shared about, the church, and I go back to that time of my life often just in my head. And I just think about, what did I learn? And I think the way I go back and look at that, like you call it, like a forced rest, where I didn't have a choice. Like the church closed, I can't just keep showing up. Like, no, it's there, church closed. The way I choose to see that, and again, this is my background. Not everyone's going to see it like this, depending on if you're a Jesus person or not. But because I am, but I like to look at it and say, I feel like that time of my life was not failure as much as protection, because there was a lot going on. If that church had continued, listen, church is a wonderful thing. I'm not saying, but for me and what was going on, and even my friend who, he was going through the marriage stuff, it would not have been a healthy thing for us long term. I was working 2 jobs at the time, and I was working a full-time job and this other thing, and it was burning me out. As much as awesome as the mission itself was, it just wasn't very healthy for either of us. And so I feel like that was protection, and that was a forced rest. It was like, hey, this isn't happening. So I totally agree with you, man. It's important to have those routines, sort of that balance built in, so that it doesn't kind of get forced on you. You know what I mean? You have to learn a different way.
Yes. One of the things that I'm going to be speaking about at the conference, I'm going to talk about the importance of your why, WHY, or protecting your why, because and I won't tell everybody what their why should be, but I know for a lot of us, there's a consistency. Like, I do this for my family. I do this for things that are really important to me. And it's so easy to lose track of our why. And then it's hard to be resilient because we start to lose. We can bury ourselves in our business, but then lose something that's much more important. And the reason that came to my mind was when you're grinding, when you're trying to make a hobby turn into a job, turn into a career, maybe a lot of people in our environments, they want to quit their full-time job to do this full-time.
Yeah.
And so they're pushing hard, which is okay. But sometimes you end up sacrificing something that matters more because you're pushing so hard and because you didn't rest. And all these things are kind of a big ball of yarn, you didn't rest, you didn't pace yourself, you didn't put your family or whatever is important to you first.
Right.
And then you get pushing. And then when you hit the ditch, you haven't built any relationships.
Right.
And so all this kind of comes
right
full
because in order to bounce back in a healthy way, you need energy, the right kind of energy to do that. And if that energy is depleted because you haven't rested, you don't have those friends around you because your whole life's in the business or whatever, and a real true setback happens, you don't have the fuel to be able to come back. And so, but people still do it because this is a very, grind is a very trendy thing. And I hate that, by the way. This is the whole grind concept. People do it and they'll just run themselves into the ground. Their health suffers, they lose their marriages, that kind of thing. And that's not a good place to be. Not a good place to be at all. And I think, go ahead.
Oh, what you just reminded me too is then when you get to those points, I know you'll agree with this, is when I'm worn out, when my tank is empty, when I've been running too hard, I then make very poor decisions.
Yes. Right. Exactly. It's the worst time to make a decision when you're in that spot. It's terrible. Yeah. Absolutely. That's why I think one of the things I like to do is when I'm having even today in my current job, but I mentioned earlier, I had a rough day today. Sometimes I'll be like, you know what? I quit this day. I walk away. I'll go. Sometimes I'll play a video game, build a Lego set because I miss on a Lego set. And I think, but for me, being resilient is as simple as showing up tomorrow. I want to step back today. I'm going to show up tomorrow. But depending on, whatever the situation is, you might need a longer break, depending on what you're feeling. But I think just that if you're resting along the way and pacing yourself and not trying to overdo it every day, that really helps you be able to pace yourself and come back, and be resilient. So just things I've learned,
Absolutely. Man, so many things on this topic that just spring to my mind that, when I'm healthy, I can think of these things, right? Because like sometimes we, oh my gosh, overwhelm can set in. And like for me, you'll have your to-do list, whether it's relative to your job or what you're trying to build. And if it's all can snowball so fast that if I'm not healthy, and I've got a to-do list that I need to do like, let's say I'm building my business. I'm trying to go from a hobby to a real full-time job. And I've got this list that I need to do. And then if I'm not healthy and my balance isn't right there, I start maybe pushing that thing out. Then I have to grind harder to get there. And then that to-do list keeps getting pushed further and further out. And then, and then I've got to hurry. And just everything can hurt everything else.
Yeah, it does.
And so being resilient has to do with because I have this thought in my mind. It's not just the willpower to get up once you've been knocked down. I mean, there is that. But if you've depleted yourself and that's why you got knocked down, there's nothing there to get back up with.
Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. It's about paying attention to yourself, your personal health, and not just the work. My dad always says, we're human beings, not human doings. And he says that a lot, just reminding me and, everyone really that, we're not, our value in being who we are isn't our output, isn't, products we create or, sales we generate or companies we start that, skyrocket. That doesn't say anything about our value. We're a being. We've got, talents, and we've got, who you are as an individual is very different than what you do. And that's why, but it's so funny. And I don't know if women do this as much. I don't think they do. I think this is a guy thing. But like you meet someone for the first time, especially guys, and you're like, hey, my name's Gabe, your name's Mark. Cool, what do you do? We just go right to work. You know what I mean? Why do we do that? We because that's just kind of what we do. You know what I mean?
Well, in fact, I did it at the beginning of our conversation today. I did that. I did it.
Yeah, it's just reflex. You know, I do the same thing. You know, it's like, why didn't we do that? You know, instead of like, tell me your story. You know what I mean? Tell me who you are. You know what I mean? It's it's very different.
So
another thing I learned too much. This just kind of came to mind for me, but another thing that helped me be resilient to the situation I mentioned earlier is I ended up leaving, you know, that church and ended up changing jobs. Actually, ended up in a completely new role, and I began to learn or discover different talents and skills that I didn't know I had because I'd been only doing this one thing, you know. And that experience led me to the job I have today. And I know I mentioned I was frustrated, but I've been here 7 years. It's a great place to work. I enjoy what I do. I'm really good at it, and I just sort of learned these skills that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to even explore and get better at had it not been for this experience. So again, just going back to what I said earlier, reframing the setback in order to be resilient. I think it starts here and how you think about it, and thinking about, okay, this thing didn't work. That just means I can try something else slightly different or completely different, you know? So it's just something else, just always, there's always a benefit to setbacks. As much as they suck, they just do. But there's always something we can learn from it that can make us better, make us stronger, that kind of thing. So
man,
I'm trying not to get into my talk too much. So, sure. But that's the gist of it. Yeah.
Well, I'll share one little story from my life, and then maybe ask you a closing question here, and we'll let people get back to their days. But you said reframing several times over our talk already, or just the way you think about things, the way you see things. I know in my life, and you know, most people who are in this community know that my life, a lot of my adult life has been in the church settings, same as yours. But these principles go way beyond that. So you can apply this to your own life easily, I'm sure. I knew from when I was in my late teens, early 20s, that part of my life calling was to be involved in the church and to work in the church and to teach and that kind of thing. And I still do that today, but here's the story is I had framed what I was supposed to do in life. I now realize very narrowly. And I thought that if I was not doing this, I was missing it entirely.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was working, you know, I worked for almost 10 years at Chick-fil-A, right? In different contexts. And I remember talking to God many times and saying, this is hilariously embarrassing because it's so dumb, is when will ministry start? And I felt like God was saying, it started 10 years ago. You've been taking care of people this whole time, you know? And I remember, and y'all, not everybody's religious folks. That's totally fine. But I think y'all are smart enough to make the connections when I look back, the things that I wanted to become were already happening.
Yeah. Right.
But I was waiting for the future.
Yeah. Right.
And I didn't waste that time, but I will say I didn't take total advantage of that time because I didn't recognize what I could have become during that time. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. Yeah. Taking that time to recognize. And that's why I think, Mark, going back, it really takes an outside perspective sometimes on our situation to be like, hey, you know, maybe you didn't see it this way, Gabe. I know you're going through this and this is hard and this is all you can see, but you know, maybe you don't see these other things you're learning or who you're becoming and, you know, that kind of thing. It really takes that outside perspective to be able to let you see that in the moment. But it is really hard though. You're like, man, I wish I was here, not realizing you're getting stronger now, you know, in order to, you know, oh man, I totally get that. 100%.
And you know, your circle can help with that, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what the circle, that's what they're there for, you know, that's why they're in your life. And totally, man. That's
And a lot of people joke about, I don't want to, if I want a healthy marriage, I don't want a circle of people who don't know how to do marriage.
Right. Exactly.
Or if I want to be financially successful, I don't want to, y'all take this how it is, but I don't want my circle to all be broke people.
Right.
I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, they have nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
I need to be around people who are, they don't have to all be perfect. That's not what I'm saying, but people who are going the direction you want to go. Right.
Exactly. And I think there's because we're not at all saying that, well, my friends can only be amazing people. That's not what we're
at
saying.
all.
We're talking about because we can be friendly and we can do things with a lot of people. But I'm talking about, if you think about like that concentric circles and the ones that are the closest to you, the tightest one, where I said you might be lucky if you got 3. Like those should be like your rocks. People that you share your heart with, and I mean, those people need to be amazing people. They don't need to lifting you up. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And you can even have small circles for different contexts.
Right.
Like you can have your business circle. You can have your spiritual life circle. You can have different circles. That's totally okay. I think everybody knows what I mean, what we're talking about there. So that's so good, man. I could not be more excited. I'm ready to share the experience with you. I'm ready to learn from you. It's going to be fantastic. So, so let me just kind of recap. Gabe is going to be speaking at our conference this summer, and it's at the nextlevellaserconference.com. If this is a good fit for you, we would love for everybody to come. If you don't know about it, you can check it out there at that link there. You can get tickets there. Feel free to message me or Will. By the way, Will is here. All y'all who are missing Will and wonder why he's not here, he's actually here. We couldn't figure out how to do the camera with the
I saw him earlier. I had proof.
He was right. He's actually here in the other room, here in Tulsa with me today. So it's been really great. But in fact, I think he's gonna sneak in behind me, right about there. Will is here. So, man, we could. That is awkward. You got to get on the other side of me. Yeah, get over here. So we could not be more honored, Gabe, to have you. It's going to be fantastic. You're going to meet a community of people that are just amazing people, and we're so glad to have you. And we're excited for you to speak into our lives and to help us become more resilient. And it's right behind Will, but our theme overall is let's grow, because we know that if the person grows, the business is going to grow. But if the person is not healthy, everything else doesn't matter.
Right. Exactly.
So that's what we're going to be talking about. It's going to be great.